December 1943. A railway depot outside Munich, Germany. The night shift coal handler shoveled anthracite into locomotive tender number 784. Deep black chunks tumbled from his shovel. Standard fuel for the Deutsche Reichsbahn. Among those black chunks sat one piece that looked identical to the others. Same color, same texture, same weight. But inside that lump, concealed beneath a painted plaster shell, sat 1/4 pound of plastic explosive. The Office of Strategic Services called it Black Joe. The handler would never notice it. The fireman would shovel it into the firebox with the rest of the coal. And when the fire reached it, the locomotive would destroy itself from inside its own fuel supply. The problem facing Allied sabotage operations in 1942 was access. German locomotives were heavily guarded. Railway yards had security patrols. Engineers and firemen were German personnel. Resistance fighters could sabotage tracks, but damaged rails were quickly repaired. The locomotives themselves remained untouchable. Until American engineers realized the fuel was vulnerable. Every locomotive needed coal. Coal yards were less guarded than the locomotives. Coal handlers were often forced laborers. A saboteur who could place explosive devices in coal piles would attack locomotives without ever approaching the trains themselves. The concept originated during the American Civil War. Confederate Captain Thomas Edgeworth Courtney invented coal shells, hollow cast iron cases filled with gunpowder. Confederate agents infiltrated Union coal supplies. When shoveled into locomotive fireboxes, the devices exploded, destroying boilers and killing crews. Courtney's invention terrified Union engineers who never knew if their fuel contained bombs. British Special Operations Executive revived the concept in 1940. SOE engineers at Station 12 in Aston House, Hertfordshire, initially drilled holes into real coal using specialized boring tools. A 6-inch serrated tube bit carefully into coal lumps. Too much pressure shattered the coal. Successful attempts created a cavity holding 1/4 pound of plastic explosive sealed with coal dust and glue. Drilling real coal was labor-intensive. Engineers developed a better method. Plaster molds shaped like coal lumps created hollow shells. Plastic explosive filled the cavity. The exterior was painted to match real coal. Production rates increased dramatically. By 1941, SOE was manufacturing explosive coal in quantity. The United States entered the war in December 1941. William Donovan's Office of Strategic Services began collaborating with SOE. Stanley Lovell's Research and Development Branch examined British sabotage devices. The explosive coal impressed American engineers. Lovell saw potential, but also limitations. British explosive coal was painted to resemble generic coal, but coal varied significantly by region and grade. German locomotives in Poland burned different coal than locomotives in France. A saboteur placing the wrong type of explosive coal would be detected immediately. Lovell's team developed the coal camouflage kit. This was an American innovation that transformed explosive coal from a specialized device into a versatile weapon. The kit contained paints, brushes, and application tools. It came with instructions for matching different coal types. Lignite coal, common in parts of Germany and Eastern Europe, was brown in color. Bituminous coal, used throughout Western Europe, appeared black with a shiny luster. Anthracite coal, the highest grade, was deep black with almost metallic shine. Each type had distinct surface characteristics. The camouflage kit allowed operatives to paint explosive coal shells to match the local fuel supply exactly. The shells themselves were manufactured from plaster. Molds created realistic coal shapes with natural irregularities. No two pieces looked identical, just like real coal. The hollow interior held plastic explosive. The OSS used Composition C, a moldable explosive that could be formed to fill irregular cavities completely. 1/4 pound was the standard load. enough to rupture a locomotive boiler or ignite a coal fire that would consume an entire tender. The detonation mechanism was heat-activated. No fuse was needed. When the explosive coal entered the firebox, the exterior shell heated first. Plaster conducted heat poorly, providing brief insulation. But as the firebox temperature reached 800 to 1000 degrees Fahrenheit, the plaster shell failed. The plastic explosive inside reached its ignition temperature. The explosion followed. Inside a pressurized boiler, the blast was catastrophic. Boiler plates ruptured. Steam escaped violently. The locomotive was destroyed. Alternative employment used the devices differently. Instead of immediate firebox detonation, saboteurs could place explosive coal in fuel tenders or coal storage bunkers without detonation. The goal was coal fire, not boiler explosion. Plastic explosive, when ignited by surrounding burning coal rather than contained in a firebox, created intense heat that spread to adjacent fuel. Coal fires in confined spaces were extremely difficult to extinguish. Water made them worse by creating steam that spread burning particles. Sand smothered surface flames, but interior coal continued burning. A coal fire in a locomotive tender could burn for days, rendering the locomotive unusable. Production began at OSS facilities in 1942. Exact numbers remain unclear, but estimates suggest approximately 3.5 tons of explosive coal were manufactured between 1941 and 1945. This included both SOE and OSS production. 3.5 tons of finished devices represented thousands of individual explosive coal pieces. Distribution went to resistance networks across occupied Europe. France received large quantities. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, and the Netherlands also received shipments. North African resistance groups received variants designed to match local coal types used by German forces in Libya and Tunisia. The tactical employment was remarkably simple. A resistance fighter working as a coal handler, railway worker, or factory laborer would receive explosive coal pieces from their network contact. The camouflage kit instructions taught them to verify color match with local coal supplies. If the match was incorrect, they painted the shells to match. Once prepared, the explosive coal was mixed into genuine coal stockpiles. No special placement was required. The devices scattered randomly throughout the coal supply created uncertainty. Every shovel of coal potentially contained explosives. German locomotive crews could not detect the threat. Visual inspection was useless. Explosive coal looked exactly like real coal. Weight differences were negligible. A coal handler shoveling tons of fuel daily would not notice a quarter-pound weight variation in individual lumps. The devices passed through normal handling without detection. They sat in coal tenders for hours or days, waiting for the firemen to shovel them into the firebox. The psychological impact matched the physical damage. German railway operations depended on predictable schedules. Freight trains carried munitions, fuel, and supplies to frontline units. Troop trains moved reinforcements. Any delay cascaded through the system. When locomotives began exploding or suffering coal fires, the entire railway network slowed. Engineers became paranoid. Some refused to fire locomotives until coal had been inspected, but inspecting tons of coal before every run was impossible. The delays mounted. German security implemented coal testing procedures. Sample coal from each pile was burned in controlled conditions before loading into locomotives. This worked at major terminals but could not be implemented system-wide. Small railway depots lacked testing equipment. Explosive coal continued reaching locomotives despite countermeasures. Conventional sabotage required close access to locomotives. Saboteurs had to bypass security, attach charges, and escape. Risk was high. Explosive coal required no direct contact. A coal handler placing devices in fuel stockpiles worked openly. Sabotage occurred hours later when fuel was consumed. Attribution was impossible. German equivalents did not exist. The Wehrmacht used sabotage devices against Allied targets, but explosive coal was not among them. The concept depended on infiltrating coal supply chains. Germany's controlled coal sources and Allied supply security prevented reciprocal use. Effectiveness remains difficult to quantify precisely. Post-war analysis suggests hundreds of locomotives were damaged or destroyed, but exact numbers are uncertain. The weapon's strategic value lay in cumulative disruption rather than single dramatic attacks. One documented incident from France illustrates the impact. In early 1944, a railway depot outside Lyon experienced a series of locomotive failures. 3 locomotives suffered boiler ruptures within 2 weeks. German investigators initially blamed poor coal quality. Testing revealed explosive residue. The entire coal stockpile, more than 50 tons, had to be discarded. Replacement fuel took days to arrive. Locomotive operations at that depot ceased for a week. The immediate disruption affected supply trains supporting German forces in southern France. The long-term effect was increased paranoia and slower operations as security procedures expanded. The British SOE produced explosive coal first and in larger quantities initially, but the American coal camouflage kit represented a significant innovation. British explosive coal was generic. American explosive coal was customized. This difference mattered in operational effectiveness. A saboteur in Poland needed coal that matched Polish fuel. A saboteur in France needed coal that matched French supplies. The camouflage kit enabled this customization. American production emphasized versatility and operator capability. The weapon also demonstrated American industrial thinking. British engineers focused on creating realistic individual pieces. American engineers focused on creating a system. The camouflage kit, instruction manuals, regional coal-type guides, and mass production created a complete sabotage platform. Resistance fighters became coal manufacturers, painting shells to match local conditions. This distributed production model was distinctly American. The devices continued in use through 1945. As Allied forces advanced, the need for railway sabotage in liberated territories decreased. But in areas still under German control, explosive coal remained effective. The last documented uses occurred in Germany itself in early 1945, when forced laborers and German resistance fighters placed devices in coal supplies, feeding locomotives, evacuating personnel and equipment eastward. Post-war analysis confirmed explosive coal as one of the more creative sabotage devices developed during the war. The concept exploited a fundamental vulnerability. Every steam locomotive needed fuel. The fuel supply chain was extensive and difficult to secure completely. A weapon disguised as fuel could penetrate security measures designed to protect the locomotives themselves. The psychology was equally important. German crews never knew if their coal contained explosives. This uncertainty slowed operations and degraded efficiency even when no explosive coal was present. The numbers document the scope. 3.5 tons of explosive coal manufactured, thousands of individual devices produced, distribution across multiple theaters, employment against locomotives, ships, factory furnaces, and power stations. Documented incidents numbering in the hundreds. Undocumented incidents likely numbering higher. Coal stockpiles destroyed when contamination was suspected. Railway operations disrupted. Security resources diverted to coal inspection. Cumulative strategic impact measurable through delayed German logistics. American innovation transformed a Civil War concept into a World War II weapon. Stanley Lovell's research and development branch took the British explosive coal design and added systematic thinking. The coal camouflage kit enabled customization. Mass production enabled distribution. Clear instructions enabled employment by minimally trained resistance fighters. The result was a weapon that looked harmless, penetrated security invisibly, and destroyed targets from inside their own fuel supply. The coal lump that destroyed German locomotives was not coal. It was plaster, paint, and plastic explosive. But to every German railway worker who handled it, every fireman who shoveled it, every engineer who trusted it, the device was indistinguishable from fuel. American engineering excellence applied to deception. The weapon hid in plain sight because it looked exactly like what it pretended to be. When it detonated, the locomotive destroyed itself. Sabotage delivered through the supply chain. Innovation disguised as coal. Black Joe burning in German fireboxes across occupied Europe.